So who am I? I'm Nick Thomas. I started this company about 9 years ago in 2003 with a former partner, a fellow named Kane, who some of you may know. Began back in the ad film and the core game world, so kind of more of a traditional audio career in that sense. And before that, I was in straight kind of pop music production. And transitioned in around 2005 into casual games with Mystery Case Files, with the very first release, with Big Fish, back when this whole genre was really kind of still in its infancy, when casual games was even kind of an unknown phrase or term in the industry, and to be honest, it wasn't taken very seriously by the gaming community at large, which thankfully has really changed. We produce about 150 games a year in the casual genre, but that's part of what we're going to talk about. What is casual nowadays? It's sort of getting a little bit gray in terms of how you define that, that genre of gaming. We own and operate 3 studios. We're in LA, San Francisco, and up in Vancouver. And we've got a pretty good team of composers, sound designers, voiceover producers. We produced a lot of games over the full run of the company. That really ranges from everything from the tiniest little mobile flash game all the way up to full shipped AAA projects. So we really consider ourselves a casual audio production team, but you know, we bring a lot of experience from really all sides of the industry in. And I kind of just like to start this off with a bit of a poll just to get a sense of who the people here are, so I can kind of know what to spend time on and skip around if people aren't interested. How many of you are actually producers or designers of games? Okay, great. Any programmers in the room? Okay. Musicians looking to kind of break in? Maybe you're already kind of involved. Any just fans of games? People here that don't fit into any of these categories? Okay, and any students? Okay. Cool. So this presentation is really for 2 kind of primary groups. One is for audio professionals, musicians looking to kind of break into casual games, or if you're in this space, trying to kind of understand it better, get a better sense of how to have success within it. And game designers and producers who are interested in how to make their games great. We're going to talk about that in the second half more, but in my opinion, this second item here is at least 50% of the equation, okay? So great music, great audio, great talent. It really only gets you as far as the producers and the people who are able to take that and make the game sound the way it's intended to sound. Okay, so it's equal responsibility in terms of the final result. And I was just talking to Aaron about trying to get more of the production department into these tracks, because I think those people in particular have a lot to gain from kind of our perspective. So what are casual games anyway? This is a very kind of hot topic, interesting topic for me. I found myself at lunch, at the speaker's lunch, sitting next to producers for Xbox content, for Perfect World, which is a huge Chinese MMO developer making content now for mobile. You know, hardcore games basically for mobile, and you know, someone from Gameloft, which is also another kind of hardcore game genre, but on a mobile device. So casual games, in terms of what I think of them and how they're really kind of more classically defined, is really defined to create games for a mass audience with simple rules, lack of commitment. So there used to be this one-click mechanic kind of concept in casual games. Never make a game where you have to right-click, because it's too complicated. That's not what a casual game is. Casual games are simple puzzle games, you know, simple adventure, match 3 type of things. They're typically played on a computer or a browser, although you ought to fold mobile into that now. The demographics vary, but it's predominantly female. And that's really been another kind of very important component of defining the casual game genre. It's It's really the genre that came out to really appeal to the female audience, which I still think is really important. And next year, I think my presentation is going to be more on how to not forget your base, which seems like the female demographic is actually not what's being talked about right now, which is an interesting change in gaming right now. And I actually think that's going to be a problem. I think we're going to forget about our women players, and they're going to be left with Farmville for the next 2 years, and that's going to be a big problem for the industry. But anyway, I'm going to assume that's not what's going to happen. We're going to talk about it more in the traditional sense, because I still think that's really what defines a casual game. So the lines are blurring in terms of what a casual game is. You know, in my opinion, you've got your iPhone, which is basically a tiny Xbox for a lot of game development right now. And so I'm not sure I call that a casual game platform. Certainly there are casual games on the iPhone, but I don't think that that's really what this is all about. Casual games are not hardcore games on a mobile platform. Infinity Blade is a great example. Coming into this as an audio professional trying to get into casual games, you do not want to put your target on Infinity Blade. It's made by Epic. It's a hardcore game on a casual platform. And so showing up with kind of casual aesthetics is not going to get you very far, because you're really just working in the core game world again. Okay? So I think for the purpose of this, conversation, but this conference in general, is to try and kind of keep your perspective on what casual games are. So what are they? So, this is sort of the traditional casual game genre right here. This is where the industry began. PC downloadable games, Big Fish, PopCap, Gamehouse, there's dozens of others. Plants vs. Zombies, Peggle, Mystery Case Files, Delicious. I mean, there's one a day from Big Fish. So, pick your PC downloadable game of choice. But that's definitely squarely within the casual genre. Mobile, iOS, Android. And these are, for the most part, casual games. They start to deviate, as we've talked about. But, Angry Birds, Cut the Rope, Where's My Water, Bejeweled, Temple Run. That's what we're talking about. Social games, Zynga, at least while they're still in business. Playdom, Wooga, Kixeye, Kabam. These are your kind of garden variety social games, which all really kind of still fit the mold. And again, casual games are about the demographic and the genre, not the platform. Okay, so it's demographics are female-weighted, typically family-friendly kind of content. One-click mechanics, match 3, hogs, puzzle games. The narratives are usually adventures or mysteries or something that's kind of compelling, again, for the sort of female audience. You're not going to find war games in this genre. And commitment, easy in, easy out, no skill level really is required. Okay? Everybody can play these games, which is why they're so fun, why there's so much interest, and why it's grown the way it has. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about development, particularly for the people coming in, composers. If you're an independent person and you're looking to understand this industry, or if you're coming from the core world or the advertising world, or if you're a film scorer or whatever, and you want to know how to have educated conversations in this industry, in this genre, you have to really understand the industry. And so you can't just be a musician, you have to kind of be a strategic audio professional, and I'll talk about what that means. So typical casual games, they have kind of a specific audio requirement kind of criteria. So there's short timelines for production. That's a really kind of common component. It's also very different from core games, from film. Small project scope, that's, small is kind of a loose term, but when you're comparing it again to core games, it's very true. High creative demands, okay? This is high creative, not necessarily high quality demands. And I think that's an important distinction, because people run around and they talk about wanting great quality music. And I don't actually think that's what they want a lot of the time. I don't think that quality is really the barometer. You could take Hans Zimmer and have him write a score for a casual game, and it would totally be inappropriate. And you could have it recorded by an 80-piece orchestra and spend $200,000 making it, and it could sound like the best piece of music in terms of quality that you've ever heard, and it will be completely inappropriate for the game. Okay? So when we're talking about high creative demands, that, in my opinion, is what quality is in this industry. How can you make it interesting, different, fun, fit the visuals, fit the game? Okay? I'm not worried about getting someone on a Stradivarius in most of my productions, because it just doesn't make any sense. It also doesn't fit with low production budgets. Okay? You're working with a lot of startups, people that are cranking out content, okay? You have to find the right gap here, the right kind of compromise between what they've got for resources and how to really give them something that's going to work for the game. And of course, you've got demanding producers, okay, who a lot of time don't know what they want. And so that's where I'm trying to bridge the gap, is get the producers here, get them a little bit of a language that they can use to kind of communicate well, helping musicians understand how to approach them with a real educated perspective. And low profile for content creators. So that, unfortunately, is just sort of part of the gig for us. You know, it's rare. No one's going to know out here who scored almost all the games on your iPhone right now, or that you play on your downloadable computer. Whereas you probably do know who scored, you know, Modern Combat 3 or, you know, Halo or whatever else, okay? So you do it for the fun. You don't do it because you're trying to be a rock star. It's sort of the... So why do most core gaming, television, and film composers struggle to be successful in casual games? Well, I think you're maybe starting to get that into focus through some of the background. But it's because they don't understand what I'm talking about. They don't understand the casual game market, okay? They'll write a Hans Zimmer score for a casual game, and that just doesn't make any sense. So now that you understand what a casual game is, let's talk about the market, okay? And this may be stuff that you guys already know, so I'll probably kind of gloss over it. But, you know, how big is this market? How many games are developed? Who plays casual games? Why do people play casual games? What are the production budgets for developing these games? This is probably helpful for people who are either developing their own title right now and don't know what is appropriate to spend on audio, or people coming in and looking to work with developers and don't know what's appropriate to ask for as a production budget. I'm just going to tell you so you know. And what are sales for a typical casual title? So knowing these details will help you in your creative productions as well as your sales conversations. You don't want to come into a casual meeting and talk about doing a 30-minute score for a game that has to ship under 20 megs, okay? Approaching casual game developers with a core gaming perspective will hurt you. They will not know how to communicate with you. They're going to feel like overwhelmed. So that's sort of what I want to talk about. So how big is the market? Some of these metrics are a little old. This wraps up in 2011, but you get the idea. You know, 84 million monthly average users. You know, it's a huge market. You guys already know. That's why we're all here. This is the market in gaming that's growing right now. Everybody's trying to rush to that side of the boat, which is why you've got all these core developers at this conference, which is kind of new to this year. And it's really exciting for those of us that are in it, because it's starting to bridge the gap, and it's starting to kind of allow a lot of us to kind of play in that world. You know, obviously, you know, of games downloaded, these are just apps pulled from the App Store. You can see which one is the most exciting. Games. It's just so dominant over everything else. So there's just tons of apps. And what is there, like 800,000 apps on the App Store now? Does anybody know? 120. 120,000. Still a lot of apps. So, you know, if almost 60% are games, we're looking at over 50,000 games, okay, in a really short period of time. So there's lots going on in this industry. So who are these casual gamers? Not these people. These are not the people that I'm writing music for and producing content for, okay? These guys are interested in a completely different type of game. They play League of Legends, okay? They don't play Where's My Water. This is also an old stat, but the general breakdown remains true. Women are the predominant demographic, especially in the older age range, okay? So, you know, we're really kind of catering to the female demographic, and this is a nice kind of breakdown here, okay? Very few women are playing Call of Duty, if you didn't already know that. And mostly women are playing Bejeweled Blitz, although I play Bejeweled Blitz, so it's a little bit more balanced. It's not like 92% to 8%, but you know, you get the idea. So again, you know, here's sort of the key distinctions between these industries. You know, demographic is for all people versus core gaming. You play anywhere, you don't just play at home. They're fun, you relax, it's not competitive. You know, kind of gives you a pretty good breakdown. And we're really talking about what's on the left, okay? So why do people play these games? Because they're fun, they're addictive. I like that. Picture cracks me up every time. Yeah. So let's talk about the budgets for these games a bit, okay? And this is hard to sort of boil down into hard stats, so I don't want you guys to just fold these into your calculator and apply them across all your conversations. But generally speaking, audio budgets are 3 to 7% of a game's development budget, okay? So if you know your platform, you know the development, you know more or less what the people in the corner offices upstairs are putting aside for their audio, okay? And these, again, loose budgets, you know, iPhone, mobile, social networking games, you know, might have a development of 50,000. Social games are definitely, there's a big asterisk by that because, you know, some of the Zynga titles are, you know, several million to develop, while others still fall in that very kind of tight production range. But you still are looking at a relatively kind of low-end percentage in terms of the budget set aside for audio. So, you know, $2,500, $5,000, it's pretty common for an iPhone title. Social game, $5,000 to $10,000 might be set aside to cover your score, your sound effects, some light voiceover, whatnot. You know, PC downloadable, $1,500, maybe $7,500 goes to audio, maybe a little more for the premium titles, like the top shelf casual games, Mystery Case Files, for example, and so forth, okay? So it kind of shows you a little bit of the sort of relative scale here as you move around in the genre, with most of the actual content being at the top because there's so many more games being made in that genre. Okay, if you do the math over the total games produced and the relative audio budgets, there's actually a lot of exciting revenue for composers, musicians, audio people inside of the mobile world, even though they're bite-sized projects. So now you know everything there is to know about the market, and we can talk about working as a composer or a sound designer or an audio producer, okay? And this is, you know, based on a sort of title that was given to casual games from a conference I did a while back, but I think it kind of applies, which is the jingle of the gaming industry, okay? I actually think that's kind of appropriate. I mean, it's you know, you got to swallow your pride a little as a composer if you want to really walk around, you know, writing in this, but that's okay because there's a lot of reasons that this industry is really a great place to be. Why are they called the jingle of gaming? Short timeline for production, okay? So from 2 to 4 weeks is typical. You know, we get requests all the time for stuff that's due at the end of a week for a title. Okay, so we've got less than a week to figure out what the game needs are, write content, deliver, implement, check it, revise, redeliver, and get it live. Now that's obviously not a great idea, but what is typical is 2 to 4 weeks, okay? So this is moves quick, moving through. Small project scope, okay? So again, it depends a lot on the platform, what you're looking at. These kind of sync up more or less with the audio budgets that are tied to them, which you saw in the previous panel. You know, iOS, Android, they're going to launch with something pretty small, then we'll support it in the back end with downloadable content. But you might have something that's just 2 minutes of music, 40 sound effects for what they're trying to ship with, okay? Social games, again, 3 asterisks because it's so varied. We did 35 minutes of music for Mafia Wars 2, and we'll do a 30-second cue for Monster World. Okay, that's huge variation between 2 social games, and ironically, Monster World is performing way better than Mafia World 2. It's just not awesome for us, but you know, it just goes to show the spectrum of needs in that part of the industry. PC downloadable, again, a lot of variation there, but you know, you can kind of boil it down to an average. 10 minutes of music, 100 sound effects, maybe some voiceover. Then you get into XBLA titles, Nintendo DS, casual shipped titles. A lot of variation within these. So again, don't take these to the bank, but this is a good kind of center from which you can kind of start your conversations, either as a game designer, which you need to set aside and plan for, or as a composer, what do you guys want to walk into that room really suggesting that the developer do, okay? There's also high creative demands. So we talked about this. High creative demands, again, is not a function of the quality of the music. It's really the variety. And so you'll kind of hear, I'm just going to play a couple samples here that kind of walk you through the different types of music that that's just kind of a random sample. And even those are actually probably more homogenized than most of what shows up in casual games, okay? You'll do a lot of different genres. So being versatile and being able to think outside of your comfort range is really going to open up a lot of opportunity for you as a composer or a sound designer, okay? If you really only do techie content, if you really only do cinematic content, what's available to you is really pretty narrow. And you know, given the variety of games out there and how much content is being produced, the more that you can write in a variety of styles, fuse these styles, and create something new and original is important. And the reason that's important is because of audio branding, okay? And this is something we believe in really strongly. If you're an iPhone developer or you're developing something with, on Facebook, and so you either have download or bandwidth issues, you only have room for a limited amount of music. That music has to really serve a purpose, okay? It has to brand your game. You have to have something that makes it catchy, unique, has to fit with the artwork, has to fit with the, whatever the emotional values are of the game that they're trying to convey, whether it's a silly game or an adventure game, whatever it might be. You really want to use that 30-second main menu or gameplay loop or whatever it is to brand the game so it becomes familiar, it creates stickiness out in the marketplace because you start to identify with what that sound is, okay? And that's kind of marketing 101 in terms of audio, but it really is showing up as a big part of the way people are thinking for social mobile games, because you just have this limited opportunity to impact people with audio. And games are really kind of looking to do something new rather than clone successful titles. Now, that needs to be qualified because you see a million clones of a physics-based game, but they're all trying to do something very different, okay? We just did a game that is a zombie slashing game that's just like Cut the Fruit, but it's completely same mechanic, same idea, but the way they wanted to approach it, the look, the feel, the sound of the music, the sound effects, really they want something that's very unique because there are a limited number of mechanics, there are a limited number of things that are working in this industry. So you may see 50 games based on a similar concept, but the people making those games really want to find as much opportunity to be different from one another as possible, and that has to show up in the audio as well. If you're going to do a score, just like another game with the same mechanic, it's not really going to do anything new or create any sort of opportunity for the game. So, yeah.
Do you have examples where the audio branding kind of scope of multiple games?
Sure, yeah, and that shows up especially in like a series of games, and that's the most common is you do a release and then you'll do, a version 2 or a themed version. You might do a Christmas version around the holidays for an iOS where they reskin it all. You might do a game and then release multiple franchises based on that one kind of IP, in which case you will often want to take a theme, which is part of the audio branding. What is that kind of melodic, whistleable, hummable melody that you kind of come to associate with the game, reorchestrate it, reinterpret the performance through a different type of production, okay, that reflects what's new.
Find it cross IPs, like at the studio level?
Not so much. Yeah, I mean, not so much. It's usually a game. All the games coming out from GREE have a different look, a different feel. They're trying to appeal to a slightly different fan base, and so they want them to feel unique, which gets us right back to the creative demands conversation. If you want to service one publisher who's making 20 different games, you have to be able to write in all those different styles, because they don't want a homogenized sound for the most part. They might want consistency in terms of quality of approach, but that doesn't mean they want the same 4-piece chamber orchestra playing a different song on 5 different tracks or 5 different games. Okay, this is not going to sound original or different. Standard library sound effects and music loops are just not acceptable anymore. They're looking for core game quality for casual game rates. And again, core game quality, don't be misled. They want really kind of compelling, interesting production. They don't just want the same old stuff repurposed and repackaged, okay? So we talked about this already, so just a kind of a repeat of what rates to expect in the kind of casual game world. Demanding producers. Producers in this are often the owners of their company. I mean, you will work for bigger established publishers and they don't have quite the same agenda. But if a bootstrap or startup entity is making a game that fails, That can mean the end of their company and their career. There's a lot at stake for these people. So they will be demanding because the stakes are very high. And so that's something that's common and to be expected. Some of these people are developing their first game ever. And this is something that's really interesting in the larger publishing world. Also, you get people getting hired into TinyCo, into Degree, into Pocket Gems, into these people making these iOS games that have never made a game before. They're programmers, they're analytic people, they're people coming from kind of different industries that are now given the opportunity to make a game. Okay, so part of our job is trying to figure out how to educate these people, which is sort of the second half of this whole presentation. Timelines are strict. You know, you got to hit your ship date. Apple doesn't play around with that stuff, so you got to really hit those deadlines, or you know, the game doesn't go. Low profile exposure for content creators. So again, you know, you don't want to expect that composers are going to write for a hit casual game and go on to success with Bungie. It's a different world in that sense, okay? So I think it's just important to go in with that kind of humility, because if you want to go in and write, you know, the next franchise game for Infinity Ward, you know, don't have any delusions that you can show up to them with your portfolio of casual game titles and have them care about you. And I don't want to discourage you, it's just a different world. It's just like showing up in the film world having written a Nabisco ad. You know, they don't care about your Nabisco ad, even though it was a really great ad. It's a different kind of genre in that same sense. But casual games are a great place to work in the industry. And, you know, I love it. We're very, very happy where we are because it's fun. You get a lot of different variety. As a creative person, it's much more interesting to me than the core gaming world, where things are so kind of homogenized into a consistent sound, and there's just like this long grind of production. These things move fast. The industry is huge, and it's growing. The barrier to entry is much lower. People can come out of school and make a game and have success with it, which is really cool, and is why this industry is always on its toes. It moves so much faster than core games. It's just like every year we're talking about new stuff here. And that's not true at GDC. GDC, it's the same ideas. It's a couple new technology improvements. It's one new hit game, and everybody starts to turn like this giant ship navigating around. These games are these tiny little boats that just can turn on a dime. I think the community is more fun. It's less stressed. It's more diverse. People in this industry come from all kinds of backgrounds. For me, that's exciting. And I, you know, like casual games. So for me, these are all great places to work. That kind of concludes the audio-oriented component for the composers, okay? The people in the room that are audio people. What I want to talk about is kind of some info for the producers, because again, a lot of people are coming in to this having not produced a game before, having not really worked with an audio team, be it an in-house person that you now can work with, or you're outsourcing to a company or an individual. So the first thing that this is really missing, and it's really important, and it doesn't take that long, but you have to do it, is to have a creative vision you can clearly communicate. You need to write down your vision. What do you want? You know, if you don't know, figure it out, because if you can't communicate it, if you can't identify what's important to you, you're just guessing. It's just, you know, you're shooting in the dark. And it's okay to not know. It's okay to struggle through that, but you have to put some time and effort into that work if you want to have the results that you're looking for. Inside of that, you should allow your audio designer to make suggestions to the scope, the creative, the technology, the implementation. Okay, this is a 50-50 relationship. Okay, you're going to get the content you want, just like art assets, but if you can't put them in properly, or if you're missing files or missing variations, or there's not enough music and so it's going to drive you crazy, listen to your audio people, because they bring that perspective, and it should be a collaboration in that sense. Okay. Proper integration is 50% of great audio. This is true. I don't care what game genre you're in. It's less true in casual games. In core games, it's fundamental. But still in this industry, casual audio is not plug and play. Okay, we will mix your stuff, balance the sound effects, make sure it's all cool on our end, hand them off, and there's still work that needs to be done on the developer's end to make sure everything is functioning properly, to make sure that it's balanced properly, to make sure that when you actually play the game, things turn out the way you expected them to. Because they don't. There are lots of little things that show up that you didn't anticipate, and you have to be able to support it with tech and integration. No one wants to do this in casual games. It's a fight that we have to have every time to make them take the time to make those little changes, okay? Even to get them to give it back to us. Number 4, so we can QC it, is a battle. What ought to happen here is we give you the assets, you put them in, you give me back the game, and I tell you everything that's wrong with it because I didn't realize that little coin was going to happen so much, and I didn't realize that you're only on that screen for 5 seconds and then you move on. Like that changed from the first time I saw it. And so this all has to be fixed or it's going to ship weird because there's 3 different, there's 30 things that happened in the 2 weeks that I've been working on the audio that have changed since the time I talked to you and the time I gave you back the files. So you have to do number 4 if you want your games to sound good. All the best games have folded this in because they understand there's back and forth here, okay? So leave room in your schedule. Do not get the assets the day before you ship, okay? It's really a bad idea. And that leads into number 5, which is the devil's in the detail, and mix is the key. Mix, 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 okay? This is part of the QC, it's part of the integration. If there's a sound that's jumping out at you that's too loud, it's gonna kill the whole score. Okay, one sound that happens all the time that's just too damn loud, it'll ruin the whole audio experience and it'll have someone turn off the game. One sound, okay? And you hear it too, because you're playing the game as a developer going, God, that just keeps hitting me in the ear. That one key pickup, bring it down. Go into the XML file, send it back to the audio designer, turn it down so it's gentle, so it fits inside of the whole aesthetic, okay? This is something that I'm really, really sensitive to because I was a mix engineer in the music industry before. Same thing's true in mixing a record. If anything's too loud, guitar solo, a snare hit, background vocal, the whole thing will just kind of not work. Once you get those things really balanced and they're all working together, the whole thing comes alive. It works in harmony, it adds to the game, it adds to the experience. It doesn't detract. And this is something as audio people we really have to push on. Producers really have to be diligent because we're at this dangerous position right now of people making the assumptions that everyone turns the audio off on a social game, that they turn the audio off on an iOS game, and that audio is not important. And for me, that's a big issue because A, we service these clients. B, we want people to have audio because we believe so much in what it gives to the game. But the reason this is happening is because the mix part, this number 4 and 5, is being missed because of lack of resources or short deadlines for delivery. So they're shipping games that aren't mixed, that haven't been QC'd from the audio side. And what happens? Doesn't sound right. And what happens next? They turn off the audio. Then the next thing that happens is they look at data that says that no one plays with the audio on because it never got mixed properly. So to me, this is a systemic issue that everybody has to really work on because it's leading to poorer games for the whole gaming community, all because of there's no room left to QC and that no one's really paying attention to the mix. And as a programmer or a producer, you're empowered to do this. This is not something that you just can wave your hand and say, I don't know why, it just isn't great. It's not great because that one sound is hurting your ears. You know that. So fix it. Go in there, turn it down. It's not that hard to do, and the whole game will get dramatically better just by spending an hour making those little tweaks. It's really hard for us as an external provider to be able to make you do that. Okay, we can tell you this is too loud, or we can revise content, can create bug notes and send them to you. But ultimately, it lies on usually an engineer somewhere along the line to actually take the time to swap in the better file or to go into the code, bring down the playback volume of that one file, that one music loop, whatever it might be, that's train wrecking the whole experience. This is something else I can send to you if anybody wants it afterwards. This is kind of something we give to our clients. If you're coming into a new game, you don't really know what you want, you don't really know how to address the needs of a project, you start here. Where do you want the cues? Where do they belong? In the menu, the UI, the map, the combat sequence, one for each level. Excuse me. Is there some unique way that we can use music to create a more interactive game? Temping. This is our best kept secret, so it's not a secret anymore. We use this on every single project. We take music from other games, films, TV, doesn't matter where it comes from, it's temporary, and we put it in the game and see how it works, okay? If you don't know what kind of music you want, grab the score from Edward Scissorhands and drop it in. See what you think. Hey, this is great. This adds a whole kind of weird, dark element. Yeah, we love it. Okay, great. So composer, give us a Danny Elfman score. That was really simple, and it's going to give you so much more awareness of what you want, what works, what doesn't work. What is the style of the music? You know, bigger picture if possible. Do you want it light, cute, gamey, orchestral, rock, jazz? What are other products, games, films, soundtracks, records, artists that would be good reference? Okay. I think people do this well in the artistic world. They're able to communicate visually what they want. When it comes to audio, sometimes people really struggle, and so just trying to get some key criteria nailed down is important. What are the limitations of the music? How long should each cue be? What's the footprint? What are the technical requirements? How much data can you actually host, stream, download, ship, whatever? And then the same kind of ideas are true for sound design. It's just a list of words that people need to, it's a vocabulary to be able to communicate what you want. I want it light, magical, glimmering, sparkles. I want something woody, earthy, organic, real, found objects, real texture. And if you can communicate just by picking some of these words or using some of these touchstones to shape your vision, it really helps you as a producer understand how that folds into the art, folds into the mechanics, really supports the game rather than just saying, hey, I need 40 sounds, figure it out. Because it's, that's a real unknown world you're walking into. And I think everybody's happier when you can go to a sound designer and say, I want earthy, organic, wood, fire, watery sounds, because then they know what to give you. And you've got a reason for that because you've thought about it and planned. And that's pretty much it. So that's basically what I have to share with you guys. I have no idea what time it is or if there's time for questions.
We have about 5 minutes.
Okay.
You want to use the mic for questions.
Okay. I don't know if anybody has any specifics.
I don't know if this is a question or just delving into what you said already. I am hearing that argument a lot that people are just turning off their sound. Can you just sort of elaborate, like, how do you talk to people that are telling you audio is not important? People just turn it off anyway. Those kind of confrontations.
Well, it's an uphill conversation because this industry is data-driven right now, which is frustrating, I think, for people in the creative world. People don't want to just make content like robots based on analytics. People want to make story. They want narrative. They want, ideas. And so the only way to battle that is to sort of I don't know, outsmart the robot with like love, right? To like create a human like emotional value to these games so that you can't just react on data anymore. And that is it's a holistic, systemic issue that really incorporates education, behind the whole process. Just kind of what I'm trying to do here with you guys, and hopefully can spread this gospel out into the industry, because if you just treat audio like an asset, checking off a box on your to-do list, you're going to get a kind of binary, unexciting result. And the result from that is going to be switch it off. When you start getting scores that are immersive, interesting, that add to the production value, then you go the other way, and people start to care, and they start to turn the audio on. This is the exact same thing that happened with casual games, years ago, where you just had requirements. Well, we need some music and we need some sounds, but like most people aren't really going to listen to these things because they're playing them on their, computers at work, right? But that stopped being true. They started going home and playing them. They started playing them with their friends, and they started finding headphones because they liked them and wanted more. And so the industry evolved, and it got smarter, and that is already happening. You're seeing a lot of that with the middle core market. Kabam, Kixeye, people making kind of casual format games, but for a hardcore gamer audience. Those people do care about audio. Those people are used to it being good. They expect to hear stuff that's going to work for them. And it's still a little dicey because technology, because producers who don't have experience with creating a great score, with programmers not having the time to care about audio. But it is moving positively in that direction. There's more and more interest. It's more and more important. But it's a tough issue. And it really requires kind of diligence on the audio contributors' side to really push for these things, to really make sure that each game that is coming out, that we make it as good as we can, because that's the only way the industry as a whole will start to embrace it more. But that's it's a long road, and we're all kind of all in it together in that sense. Okay, well, that's it. Hope you guys got something from it. Thanks.